call this August 25th, 2016 meeting of the AMATS Policy Committee to order. It is 1:30 p.m. Next we'll do the roll call. Mr. Peterson.
Present.
Mr. Flynn.
Present.
Mr. Abbott filling in for Mayor Berkowitz.
Present.
Ms. Heil.
Here.
We have a quorum. Craig, will you please do the public involvement announcement?
Sure. The only new person in the room is that young gentleman. I'll let him here anyway. All AMATS meetings are public meetings, and the public is invited to comment. If we have a business item or a presentation by staff or consultant, then the committee will be given a chance to discuss it, and at that point, the public will be invited to comment.
Thank you. Do we have approval of the agenda?
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Heil, seconded by Mr. Abbott. Do we have any changes?
Mr. Chair, there have been some comments, questions, suggestions on the second business item, the public participation plan. And if folks don't mind, if we can hold that over for a month, and we'll make those fixes, tweaks, changes, et cetera, and we'll bring it back up next month. That's okay with the committee.
Mr. Chairman, I will move that we delete 5B from our agenda for today.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Abbott, seconded by Ms. Heil. We will remove public participation plan update memo from the agenda today. Are there any other objections? Are there any objections to adopting the agenda? Hearing none, the agenda is approved. We have before us the minutes from the July 28th meeting for approval. Do we have a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved to approve by Ms. Heil, seconded by Mr. Abbott. Any changes or discussion items? Mr. Bloom?
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry, I hadn't had a chance to review the minutes prior to reviewing them, but I'm looking at them now.
Okay.
I think they're, either I misspoke or it was misinterpreted on page 5, so we can postpone consideration of these items and consult with staff.
So later today or till next month?
Probably next month. Usually it was me to be able to take, make sure we got it right.
Mr. Chairman, I will move that we postpone action on the minutes of July 28th until the September policy committee meeting.
Second.
We will postpone the review of the July 28th minutes until next meeting. Motion by Mr. Abbott and seconded by Ms. Heil. Are there any other objections to the minutes? So we'll move on to the next item. Agenda item 5A, 2015-2018 TIP administrative modification, number 11. Right?
All right, so administrative modification, again, is basically a minor amendment to our TIP. And so we have a lot of small changes in here that reflect working on balancing the program. There are some small text changes and some changes to schedules, but for the most part, it's just balancing the monies throughout the year so we end up with the right total figure. So you have a memo, and then you also have the regular TIP. So I'm sure you're used to seeing those things forever and ever. I can just go through the memo here and start with table 3 and kind of let you know what we got going. So in table 3, we updated the scope for O'Malley Road to reflect some additional funding from non-AMATS sources. There's some state GO bond funding and other funding, federal funding, the NHPP and other statewide STP funds. The original plan was all of the non-AMATS funding was going to be in the GO bond, so this reflects that the state may utilize some other pots of federal money to do that. So we need to reflect that in the text there. The Dowling Road reconstruction reflected the funding that required some more cost overruns for the construction project. Again, we usually make those changes in the obligation report. And again, if we have a construction project and we have cost overruns, those are automatically approved so that we don't run into any time trap issues. So we reflected the funds that were actually going to be obligated there. O'Malley Road, additional $2.44 million added there to cover the increased utility cost, and balancing the tip between 16 and 17, and reducing the amount of AC that was needed based on those additional funds there. Just due to balancing, we increased the amount of money in the payment replacement program. It was $434,000 in 2017, and it's now $1,434,000. So, and then we removed the funding program for Spenard Road rehab, since this is now a local bond and a local bond passed, and we just need to reflect that in the tip itself. Table 3. Any questions on that? Okay. For the most part, in Table 4, what we've done is we had figures in there when we built the tip, basically nice round numbers of $1 million or $1.5 million. And then as we got farther down the road and did the actual design and figured out how much things were going to cost, we have the actual dollar figures there. So we're reflecting the actual dollar figures. So instead of $1 million for bike plan project implementation, it's $727,000 actual figure. And what we've done is move the money that we took out of the 2016 year and added it to the 2017. So the dollar figures, the percentages over the 4-year life of the tip stay the same. They're just not happening in 16, they're happening in 17. In addition, the last project in there that's listed in the memo, and it shows here as project number 3, the multi-use path on Benson between Lois Drive and Minnesota Boulevard. There was some confusion as that project was ranked and scored and put in there, and once we did some more looking out there, realized that there is a pathway there, and so the funding didn't need to be there because there's already a pathway there. There's already a facility. We were told otherwise when we ranked and scored, so that money got deleted out of there. And that's it for the Table 4 non-motorized stuff. No questions? Table 4A is again our Transportation Alternatives Program. This is outside the AMATS allocation, but it's the federal funding, and we did the ranking and scoring on that, but it's outside of our allocation. Basically what we've done here is just updated those Chugach Foothills connector and the bike plan project implementation to separate the design right-of-way and utilities. We had it all in 1 year previously in 2017, and we separated out the design right-of-way and utilities construction into 2 separate phases, which is how it's actually going to be utilized. So that's just reflecting that change. Table.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, question, Mr. Peterson?
So the Chugach Foothills connector is going to be doing planning in 2017 in construction in 2018. Is that correct?
That's when those funds will actually be obligated. So we'll do the design right away. I don't believe there's actually any right of way needed for that, but if there is, that would be done in 2017, and then the funds for the construction and utilities would be in 2018. That's when it'll be obligated. It may get built in 18, it may get obligated in 18 and built in 19. We'll just see how it goes when we get there, but that's when it'll be obligated.
All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Table 5, the CMAQ funds. Again, in Table 5, we have the top 2 projects there that are the actual CMAQ funds as they come from the federal government. The rest of the projects in there are, we take our allocation of SDP funds and put it in the CMAQ category, but they're not actual CMAQ funds. But all we've basically done here is we had funding for an update to the MTP in there based on when we did the last one and when we would need to do the next one, and then we did the interim one in between due to the getting to the time crunch idea. And so we already had the money for the update that the RFP was let, and we're in the middle of contract negotiations right now, so we didn't need another $708,000 in 17. It will probably be closer to 2021 or something like that when we would have that funding in there. So we were able to, we don't need to have it in that category, in that project, I should say. And so we moved some of that money and some other monies into the transit fleet expansion just to balance the program. That's where we usually put our excess funds into the transit fleet replacement. So buses are always a challenge to fund, and that's what we usually do. And those are the changes for the TIP admin mod number 11. The dollar figure is such that it requires policy committee approval. So the TAC met 2 weeks ago and recommended approval.
Any questions or comments from the committee? Mr. Cohen?
Right, back on table 4, on area white trail rehabilitation, what process do we use to select? Remind me what process we use to
Well,
select
what we,
trails for
typically what we do on these, the bike plan, ped plan, and trails plan is we have a term contractor who goes in and working with PM&E and parks identifies which trails are in the highest need of repair for some pavement rehab. So we work with them to get a prioritized list, and then PM&E does the work there.
So we essentially give control of this to PM&E for execution.
Yes, give the parks, identify the trail segments, and then typically a term contractor, occasionally it will get blended with another unrelated project that happens to be in the neighborhood. But typically it's the term contractor that goes out and repaves a section.
And then, thank you for that, Mr. Abbott. Moving to table 5, you mentioned that the MTP contract has been almost is in negotiation. Are you allowed to tell us who the parent winning bidder is?
Not yet. Not purchasing.
Timeline?
What's that?
Timeline?
We did our contract negotiation on Monday, and so we were writing up a memo to send it down to purchasing to say, here are the tweaks, changes, et cetera, and then they'll be able to take that and give an NTP to the contractor.
Actually, we'll probably, the next step will be a recommendation of award, and at that point we can tell both the public and, more importantly, the unsuccessful candidates the outcome of the process.
And finally, on the fleet expansion and replacement, are we anticipating those going to be standard buses, or do we not have an idea of what it looks like at this point?
I don't know that we have an idea at this point. I know that there's been a lot of discussion, and Mr. Abbott probably give you more insight into this, but a lot of discussion on the possibility of electric vehicles. So, but I don't know when the next bus buy is. Mr. Abbott may know, but.
Short answer is there'll be mainline fleet buses the next in the cycle, and Craig's right. The mayor's asked Transit to investigate what non-diesel powered equipment might look like.
And so we have surplus generation capacity. But it would be
There you go.
It would be good to get an update on that sort of particular list. Just that, okay, we've allocated you $100,000. What are you going to do with it?
And you'll see a lot of that in the capital improvement program / budget for transit, and you guys will get that in a month or so. So you'll get more than you probably want, including how the AMATS money would go.
Still put it on. Just make sure.
Smart.
Because sometimes in a large CIP budget, things get missed.
I hope we don't miss 900,000.
I will make sure Transit is aware that we would like an update on what's happening.
That's all I have, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your indulgence.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from the committee? Any comments from the public? Having no other comments, what is the will of the committee?
Move to approve amendment, TIP amendment, administrative modification number 11.
Second.
Approval was moved by Ms. Heil and seconded by Mr. Peterson. Are there any objections to approving the motion? Hearing none, the motion is approved. Okay, next on the agenda is the, we're skipping that item. Craig, are there any other action items?
There are no other action items. I know that the person who is scheduled to present our informational item is, I believe, in the meeting manager's conference room. I guess I could run over there and try and track them down.
It's not my fault.
Yeah, right. Not my fault.
No, fair question. Yeah, let's get
Take a brief at ease.
Let's get we'll take an easy to track them down.
Yeah, I thought that's why Cheryl was on the wall trying to yank him out when he would be required over here, so.
Mr. Chairman, for your notification, I received one of the many random phone calls I received over the course of the given week today from a gentleman who apparently lives in the vicinity of 80th Avenue and Old and he's having difficulty getting attention paid to the fact that his subdivision, someone homes is on well water and somehow being impacted by the highway project. I'm not sure I fully understand him. He thought he was calling the South Anchorage representative. Which I'm
Oh.
not.
Is this where you want me?
Right there would be great.
I have vague understanding of this.
Okay. He's not feeling well.
Okay. Alright. Moving on to agenda item 6A, Transportation Investment Symposium, new investment for a new era.
Robert Liberty is here to give his presentation.
So
Why don't I go ahead and introduce Robert? Sorry. I'm Cheryl Richardson with Anchorage Citizens Coalition, and we brought him up to talk to folks about infill and redevelopment and how those investments pair up with transportation investments. And frankly, he's got a symposium in Portland later on that we're very interested in. And again, it's land use and transportation. He's a native-born Portlandian and
former elected official and
former elected official, thank you, and a lawyer from a fancy school, and a postdoc after that. And so land use and transportation has been his trade for about 30 years now, and we're lucky to have him up here today. Thank you.
Toby, can you please limit your presentation to approximately 10 minutes?
That's fine. So what is the symposium about? Well, based on my experience over the last 25 years with large transportation projects, we waste a lot of money. We waste a lot of money because we're not clear about what we're trying to do. We don't discuss trade-offs. We aren't clear about benefits. And I'm talking about projects I've been involved in up to $3.5 billion projects. I think we can get a lot more value for money. So this symposium is about that subject, which is how do you get a lot more value for the amount of money you have? We have a lot of very low-performing projects in the United States. Let me give you an example. I asked about a Beltway freeway called Interstate 205 many years ago as a lead into another big project discussion. I said, how much did it cost? What was it supposed to do, and did it do it? There was no answer to any of those three questions. And that is a standard problem in the United States. The problem definitions are so broad and generic, like reduce congestion, increase safety, that they can apply to anything. There's no comparisons between projects to show which ones might deliver the same benefit at lower cost. There's no definition of the benefits. Instead, we focus on projects and delivery of projects as though that's the outcome. That is not the outcome. The outcome is things like safety or increased access or reduced congestion. And there are a lot of ways of doing that that do not involve expensive solutions like adding lanes or, for that matter, building light rail transit or high-capacity transit where it doesn't fit. So this symposium is very unusual because it's trying to marry cost-effectiveness with a more integrated approach to land use and transportation and program delivery. Who's speaking? Lynn Peterson, former Secretary of Transportation of Washington State. Selena Reynolds, who was the Director of Transportation of the City of Los Angeles, who came out of bike and pedestrian background in San Francisco. Jared Walker, who was here talking about transit and often talks about these same topics in the context of transit. Joe Courtwright, economist who you can see in the Huffington Post and New York Times, who runs the City Observatory. And a whole spectrum of people. The creator of Mosaic, which is a program evaluation tool developed for the Oregon Department of Transportation, which, to no surprise of anyone at home, the Oregon Department of Transportation will not use because they're not interested in cost effectiveness. They're interested in projects. So when I worked on Development Symposium, I thought this is a great need. Our infrastructure in the United States is reaching 50 to 100 years of age, which means it needs major renovation and replacement. Meanwhile, we try to expand the system to deal with ever decreasing densities to the edge. That is a fiscal crisis that's upon us now. I think we can do more with the amount of money we have to build communities, to build access, to protect the environment. I don't think it is rocket science. So that's what the symposium is about. It's 2 days. The tuition is, I think, $250. You'd be able to fly down and fly out on a Friday morning if you want. It is not about tours of Portland, because actually, in this field, I don't think we have much to show, except there's one project I think is very impressive, which is the new bridge, which came in very inexpensively. I could show you some bad things we did, but it's really a national symposium to be clear about your purposes, talking about trade-offs, finding new ways of spending money wisely, and achieving a wider range of benefits. So to make this less abstract, I'll give you one example and then I'm done. So, if you're concerned about congestion, and maybe that should not be the first priority in Anchorage, but if you were, this is how I'd approach it. Instead of saying, here's a project for a highway-to-highway connector, say, we're going to spend $100 million in congestion reduction. We invite any engineering, planning consultant firms in the United States or anywhere to come to us and tell us how much congestion they can produce with $100 million, how they will do it, and show us how they will do it. So let's say we have 6 teams. When 6 teams come, you can do this with safety too. Show us how many lives have been saved. They give you their best results in a very different set of examples. And then you tell each of the teams, you now give all your work documents to the other teams, and now you go at the other teams and you rip their analysis apart and show us why they're wrong. Then you get the next round. Come back to us with a revised proposal. And you'll see a convergence. Then you can pick one. Assuming you build it, you save money for a bonus at the end. You're going to monitor the performance of the project. You told us to do this. We're going to check it. And if you deliver, you get $10 million. And that becomes how you make project selection. Not by starting out with lines of the map and deciding to build this, but by delivering the benefits. Save lives, build community, reduce congestion. That's one of the ideas that we're talking about this symposium. So I hope you'll come.
Thank you.
What are the dates?
September 21 and 22, so it's Wednesday and Thursday. We also have a program where we provide assistance to the communities over the course of a year on a theme, common theme, and we are exploring transportation investments as that theme.
Any questions or comments about the committee?
Food's good too.
Is that part of the 250?
Yeah, exactly.
Actually, there is a reception. I'm sure we'll have local food. I'm sure we'll have local drinks.
Okay. Any comments from the public?
What is a food truck?
Thank you for your time. Thank you for your service to your city.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Are there any other general information items? No? Now the floor is open for comments from the committee. Mr. Peterson.
I think at this time, thank you.
Mr. Flynn.
Actually, I think I'd like to go into this one, but I unfortunately am not able to due to other schedule conflicts, but it sounds interesting. Hope somebody can go.
Mr. Abbott.
Nothing, thank you.
Ms. Idle. Now the floor is open for comments from the public. If there are no comments from the public, thank you all for your participation. The meeting is adjourned at 1:56.